So, you'd like to be a teacher, would you? You'd like to take the platform, you'd like to have that microphone, you'd like to be at the front of the class, teaching, training, you'd like to be a lecturer. Well, you desire a good thing. In fact, that's what the Bible says. You desire a good thing. But it is a very interesting and a very challenging platform, unlike any others, mainly because of its interaction. But nevertheless, it's a good platform and it's a good opportunity, and maybe some of you are sensing a gift and a calling to being a teacher, a lecturer. And I would certainly esteem you in that and encourage you to pursue that. But for the majority of us that perhaps have the opportunity now and then to speak in the classroom, and perhaps are not going to have the formal training for that platform, this lesson, I hope, will be of some assistance to you in some of the things that we need to consider when speaking in a classroom setting. I'd like to begin with a quote, Pearl S. Buck. And this quote was given to me by Jenny Bickmore Brand. In fact, it's on her signature on her email. She signs off for this, and Jenny was very helpful for the college in setting up our teaching degrees here at the college. But I like the quote. It says, "Only the brave should teach. The men and women whose integrity cannot be shaken, whose minds are enlightened enough to understand the high calling of a teacher, whose hearts are unshakably loyal to the young, whatever the interests of those who are in power." I don't know which words stand out to you in this particular quote, but for me there are four words that stand out. The word integrity. You know, if we're going to pursue or we're going to speak in that classroom setting, then it's important that we have the right motive for teaching, to be integrous. I like the word calling. I think that is a calling to teach, to train, to mentor. It is a gift. In fact, it's one of the Ephesians 4:11 giftings, isn't it? Pastor, evangelist, teacher. The word loyal. Being loyal to the students, being there for the students. I'm always conscious of when I'm speaking to students, they are the focus. It's their dreams and their hopes and their aspirations. It's their futures that ought to be my priority, not my own. I'd like to think that I believe in all of our students and their future and their destiny. And then that word power. Integrity, calling, loyalty, and that word power. I like how Pearl has worded that. Loyal to the young, whatever the interests of those who are in power. I know here at the college, it's an interesting dynamic. As a college, we're a business. We're in the business of education. And we have, there's some bottom lines there. We need to make a bit of money. But, the reality is we have to keep the students. I think, for me, the students are up there as a main priority for us. And having them at the forefront of our thinking. And, sometimes that can be a challenge, It's an interesting challenge. But it's a rewarding opportunity to be able to teach. I want us to have a look, just by way of some introductory remarks here, at a quote by Aristotle on the subject of persuasion. In teaching, there's a certain amount of persuasion that's taking place. As a speaker, as a teacher, a trainer, a lecturer, you're persuading students. You're persuading them in a certain belief. You're persuading them to have a certain understanding. There's an objective, there's a goal that each lesson has that you are, in many ways, persuading those students to consider and to embrace. And so on this subject of persuasion, Aristotle has something quite interesting to say. And I quote here. He says, "Of the modes of persuasion furnished by the spoken word, there are three kinds. Three kinds or three modes of persuasion, and picture it in the context of a classroom, if you will. The first kind depends on the personal character of the speaker. The second on putting the audience or the students, I've inserted that there, into a certain frame of mind. The third mode there on the proof or apparent proof provided by the words of the speech or the lecture. I've inserted that itself. So he goes on to identify these three modes of persuasion. They are ethos, pathos, and logos. You might be familiar with these. Ethos, pathos, and logos or logos. Three modes of persuasion that you will experience or encounter in the classroom. The challenge is which of these three will primarily guide you as a lecturer, as a teacher, as a presenter, as a public speaker in that platform. Are you going to be influenced and guided by ethos, by pathos, or by logos? Let me just make a brief comment about it. Ethos, that's integrity and character. Ethos, it has to do with who you are and how you come across when you teach, when you lecture. You know, pathos, we speak about that word in terms of stirring up people's emotion. I like to do that. Stir people's emotions. You know, the emotion of pity or anger or fear or hope. All of these different emotions that as a lecturer you could stir up. And then logos. I love, and I borrow this term from our principal. I can hear him saying, and he enjoys when he's in the classroom, he uses the word robust discussion, he likes. You know, and this thought there of logos, the use of argumentation, discussion and debating and arguing and wrestling with different concepts and different principles. So just by way of introductory remark here, when we talk about this platform, the classroom platform, and standing and speaking publicly in front of students, it'd be interesting for you to have a think about these different modes and how they influence you. In fact, an interesting exercise would be to reflect for a moment on your classroom experience as a student. And as a student, which of these three modes influenced you the most? Which of these did you gravitate to? Was it the lecturer whose character and interaction with you was most important and most appealing to you? Was it the lecturer that stirred you up emotionally? Maybe with stories and different statistics that would cause you to rise up, maybe in anger or, disbelief, or, you wanted to take up the challenge or the fight and you were stirred emotionally there. Or was it the lecturer that engaged you in robust discussion? Was it the lecturer that would present, case studies and you would engage in that and there'd be group discussion and maybe you'd have to wrestle through and then present in the classroom? Interesting thought. The interesting thing about it is I think that the way you best receive in the classroom is probably going to influence you as to the way you give and the way you speak in the classroom. The way that you received is probably going to be the way that you give. I was thinking about it for me and how does this impact me? For me, I'm probably more inspired or lean towards the logos and the pathos. I like the logos. I like those debates. I like those discussions. I don't generally have all the answers, but I like that interaction of students. I like giving them a case study. And I do like to stir up emotion and get people emotionally interacting. So something for you maybe have a discussion about. Maybe if you have a tutorial, you can look at these modes of interaction, or these modes here of persuasion, ethos, pathos, and logos. just one more comment before we look at some practical principles here. Just a comment on classroom management. You know, one of the things to consider when you take this platform is the management of the class. Now, I've put a definition there in your notes of classroom management. I read there, quote, a term used by teachers to describe the process of ensuring that classroom lessons run smoothly despite disruptive behaviour by students. The term also implies the prevention of this disruptive behaviour in the classroom. And that's what we talk about, classroom management. But I like the last thought there, probably more than the first two, maybe because I don't like to confront disruptive behaviour. In actual fact, I don't really experience that much in our Christian context here. But I like the last part there of this definition when it talks about the creation of an engaging environment for learning. And I think one of the things that we do need to consider when we take this platform is that we do create, and I think it's the responsibility of the lecturer, it's the responsibility of the teacher to create that engaging environment. You think about it in some of the other platforms. If you're preaching in a church, you're not the senior pastor, maybe you're a guest preacher in another church, it's not really your responsibility to create that engaging environment. I think Hillsong do it really well. They've created a strong culture. People are leaning in, people are taking notes, people are interacting with amens and standing up and pointing. And, you know, they've created a very engaging environment. When you're in the classroom, you have to create that yourself. You have to set the culture of that classroom. So just another thought there in terms of taking the opportunity to speak into this platform, a completely different setting. My voice is going on me. Let's have a look then at some key thoughts around some key concepts around how to best engage in the classroom. The first thought that I want to bring you is lessons not just for the advanced learner. Lessons, preparing lessons not just for the advanced learner. Most lecturers, we do gravitate to those that are more learned. The reality is that in every classroom, you're going to have varying levels of competency. You're going to have those students that are quick learners. They're fast to learn. You're going to have the slow learners that take a bit more time, and you've got to go over and over and repeat and repeat again. You're going to have those students that know it all. They just know it all, you know. Like my father said to me when I was 17, he said, "Son, why don't you leave home now when you know it all?" And so I did, and I soon learned that I didn't know it all. You're going to have those students that they're going to have questions for you to answer, rather than you asking questions, if that's the way you do it. But there's just going to be such a different, a range of different students at different levels and understandings. And so I think one of the keys is, if you take this platform, is to prepare lessons that meet the overall need of the classroom. You don't have to prepare complicated or high-level subject matter lessons to actually challenge your students and to engage them. And so it's not just that high-level student that you want to focus on. Number two, then, flowing on from this is having well-designed lessons. If you're going to speak in the classroom setting, it's a must that you have taken the time to prepare those lessons. Well-prepared lessons will give you confidence to stand in front of those students, particularly when there's going to be that interaction. We've all gone into the classroom where the lecturer has said, "Okay, students, I want you to take out your textbook and I want you to read chapter 7. And you look at chapter 7 and you think, "That's going to take me an hour to read chapter 7. And then someone says, "Teacher, we actually read that. Excuse me, sir, we read that during the week." And, "No, students, I want you to read chapter 7 again." And whenever that happens, and I've been in that situation, the first thought that I have is, this teacher hasn't prepared a lesson. They're wanting us just to read the text, and then maybe he's going to ask us some questions or ask us what we think about the text. It's important to have well-designed lessons. I think the most important thing is to build your lessons. Build them. The Bible talks about line upon line, precept upon precept. One revelation upon another revelation upon another revelation. That's how our faith grows. A little bit at a time. We take a truth, we process that, and we understand it, and we practice it, and then we take another truth. And I think, when it comes to lessons, build your lessons. Take a thought, develop it. Go over it and look at it 3D, and then, when you've got that one, then have another one and another one. Just well-designed lessons. Number 3, I think it's important to encourage participation. Somebody once said a silent classroom is not conducive to development. For me, I don't want a silent classroom. I don't want loud noise that's not structured, but I don't want silence. Sometimes you'll have some quiet times. I try to work on a 50-50. Now, you're not getting this in the videos, I know. You're just listening to me ramble on for 20 minutes. But in the classroom, in the live classroom setting, for me, I'll talk 50% of the time, and then I'll allow the students to talk for the other 50% of the time. And it won't be I'll just speak for the first 15 and then let them speak for the second 15. I like it to be live, I like to be fluid, and like it to be engaging. I don't like to just preach for half an hour or lecture for half an hour, and then the last 10 minutes say, has anybody got any comments or questions? Generally, I've tried that. It doesn't work. Share a thought, ask for some feedback. Share another thought. And really what you're doing then is you're starting to manage the conversations. You'll ask for a comment, someone will give a comment, someone else will want to respond to that comment, and then you'll manage that, and then someone else will say it. And you're managing that participation. I'd encourage you to develop the skill of asking good, open-ended questions. Questions that develop thought and that take people on a journey of discovery. Can I also encourage you, don't fall for that trap of wanting to be or feeling that you have to be controversial. You don't have to be controversial. You'll have enough controversy in the classroom without having introduced controversy deliberately to stir people up. Number 4, if you want to be a good teacher, you want to be a good communicator in that classroom setting, then I say love your students. Love the students. Know their names. Learn about their families and what's happening in their lives outside of the classroom. Again, I heard someone said, I care more about the people my students will become than the scores on the tests that they take. Take an interest in your students. I find that the best interaction between teacher-student takes place when you open up your heart and let the students in. Be vulnerable, be transparent, let the students in. If you're not too sure about the content, or you're not too sure, or you're wrestling with some themes or principles yourself, be open and honest about that. Face your students when you're talking with them and listen to them and engage with them. And I'm not saying you have to become best friends with every student in the classroom, but you certainly want to engage enough that they know, because students know whether you're interested in them. They know whether you value them in the classroom, or whether it's just your opportunity to speak and your opportunity to espouse all of your knowledge and your understanding on them. So love your students. And you can do little things to communicate that. Celebrate birthdays or, high points. I always like to start our lectures with a prayer, and has anybody got a good testimony? Something good been happening, and just pastorally, I guess, engage and love your students. Number 5, it's important to create ownership. Create ownership. You've heard it said, a teacher only needs to be one step ahead of the students. And sometimes in a busy life and a busy schedule, I'll admit I'm only one step ahead. But you know, the truth is I'm a learner too. In fact, I'm in the classroom just as much to learn as the students. And I create an ownership of that. Let's all agree we're here to learn. We're not here to just, you know, communicate how much we know and I've been there and I've done that and I've written a book on that. You know, it's interesting, you know, when I get the opportunity to speak in some of the master's classes, you know, you're speaking there with students that have written books and travel the world speaking at conferences, you know, and it can be a little bit challenged, but I think we create that sense of ownership. We're all here to learn together. We're all in this together. I'm in the classroom, not just because I'm the teacher, but because I'm a learner as well. I'm here not out of duty. I'm not here out of obligation. I'm here because I love you and I want us to learn together. But you've got to create that sense of ownership in the classroom. Number 6, establish identity. Establish a classroom identity. You know, some of these subjects that I teach at the college, I teach leadership and preaching, pastoral ministry. I've been teaching them for years now. And so, you know, I do refresh, but the subjects are the same. But here's what I love. The classroom is never the same. Year after year after year, you've got different personalities in that classroom. And I think it's really important if you're going to take this opportunity, you know, to speak, to publicly speak in a classroom setting, to understand the different personalities, the different values and cultures and that different creativity that every class has. But it's important to identify that and to establish that and to provide leadership into that setting. I think you have to make space for interaction if you want interaction. You know, if that's what you want your class to be identified by, that the students have the opportunity to interact and speak and share, then you have to create the space for that. If you're going to have group work, you know, I'm big on the way I set out the classroom. I guess it's a part of the management as well. You know, I don't like me sitting here and students sitting there. I actually like to have the tables around. And so this sense of this sitting together, it's a lot more conducive for interaction. It's a lot more conducive for group work. When you haven't just got students sitting in rows, one behind another, students looking at the back of somebody else's head. Of course, the larger the class, it becomes more challenging. But work out, what do you want your class to look like? What do you want it to be identified as? Number 7, it's important in this setting, in teaching, that you're willing to address conflict. I just want to say one thing about addressing conflict. I choose to mediate, not dictate. I choose to be a mediator, to find resolve. I choose to engage the students in helping to solve conflict where it's appropriate. I don't want to be a policeman in the classroom. I don't want people too afraid or scared or nervous to say anything or, you know, contribute in any way because I'm going to jump down on them. But, you know, when conflict does arise, and often it could be healthy, but sometimes it can get out of whack, you know. And so we just have to be clear with our guidelines and the consequences for that. But be willing to address that. If you don't address conflict in the classroom, you'll very quickly that class will get out of hand and you'll find restlessness, and it's like sheep in a pasture. You know, the shepherd has to address that sheep or that ram that wants to dominate, and you know, very quickly that flock of sheep can become very nervous and fearful, and it's the same thing in the classroom. So take the opportunity if it arises as a guest lecturer, or if you're thinking about teaching and pursuing that, then I'd really encourage you in it. It's a wonderful platform. It's different from the other platforms, but it's very rewarding. Having the opportunity to be with, in many cases, the next generation and having a small part to play in their development and their future. God bless you. See you next lesson.